State Member Update. The Fire Tax That Burns Us All, by Nicole Werner MP. You know things are truly dire when the people who feed the nation leave their farms to march the streets. Recently, I joined over 500 farmers, CFA volunteers and landowners on the steps of the Victorian Parliament to protest the government's new emergency services and volunteer funding levy. The crowd, many of whom were dressed in CFA uniforms, flannel shirts and dusty work boots, chanted "Scrap the tax" as their voices echoed across Spring Street in defence of their livelihoods and communities. The new Emergency Services and Volunteer Funding Levy will replace the existing Fire Services Property Levy that is paid by every landowner and ratepayer in the state, and will more than double an existing tax for residential properties, significantly increasing the burden on businesses and increasing taxes on farmers by 150%. Currently, residential owners pay the Fire Services Property Levy at a rate of 8.7 cents per $1,000 of their property's capital improved value, which is determined by government calculation. As of July 1, this will increase to 17.3 cents per $1,000, more than doubling the costs to every ratepayer in the state. It's yet another tax grab at a time when families and businesses are struggling under the cost of living. But the changes to the rates on farmland are perhaps the most insidious, with farmers' levy rising from 28.7 cents for every $1,000 of a property's capital improved value to 71.8 cents, a whopping 150% increase. To add insult to injury, the Victorian government is slugging farmers with this increased tax, while many are facing the worst drought in decades. To put this in perspective, let's consider the effect on the average Victorian beef farmer. In Victoria, the Department of Primary Industries reports that the average cattle farm is about 750 hectares. According to Rural Bank's Australian Farmland Values mid-year update, the median price of farmland in Victoria in 2024 was $14,562 per hectare. Based on these figures, a cattle farmer with an average-sized property would face an extra $4,707 in land tax from July 1, bringing the total to $7,842, right when farmers are already battling severe drought, exacerbated by soaring feed and water costs. Many of the farms that supply our Victorian supermarkets operate on an even larger scale, meaning some farmers will be hit with land tax increases of tens of thousands of dollars under this new levy. These costs will inevitably be passed on to consumers, with every grocery shop, trip to the butcher and meal eaten out. Further to that, most CFA crews in regional Victoria are made up of farmers. These are the same people who volunteer their time, money and equipment to fight fires, saving the government an estimated $1 billion annually in labour and resources it would otherwise have to fund. Now they are being punished with higher emergency services levies, even though much of the centralised funding never makes it back to their local brigades. It's a punch in the gut from the state government to the very people who put food on our tables, keep our supermarket shelves stocked and protect our communities. But make no mistake, while farmers will be hit the hardest, ratepayers across the state, including in Manningham and Nillumbik, will also be forced to pay double what they were previously charged. The government stands to collect $2.1 billion from this levy hike, propping up its strained coffers as Victoria grapples with record levels of debt. Immediately after Labor rammed through their 60th new or increased tax, sitting until 1:30 a.m. to make it happen, over 200 CFA brigades went offline temporarily in protest, refusing to answer call-outs. A fair and decent society doesn't balance its books by burdening those who give the most. It doesn't double taxes on families or force farmers deeper into hardship just to cover up for years of economic mismanagement. We need a government that listens, not one that legislates in the dead of night. Funding for core emergency services should not be paid for out of a new tax. Our emergency services, including our local CFAs, SES crews, and paid firefighters, are essential services, not optional extras. Governments are supposed to fund essential services through existing consolidated revenue, not by imposing another tax that unfairly targets the very volunteers that make up many CFA and SES crews across our state. The government must reprioritise its budget. focusing on frontline needs like the CFA, SES and Ambulance Victoria, instead of pouring billions into vanity projects like the suburban rail loop. Labor is using the SES as a smokescreen to justify this tax grab. But let's be clear, most of the $2.1 billion raised is going to fund more bureaucracy, not the boots on the ground. Despite the rhetoric in the budget papers, much of this new levy won't scratch the surface of what our volunteer brigades actually need. They've thrown CFA and SES volunteers a few headline-friendly crumbs, but there's no long-term strategy, no rolling truck replacement program, and no real commitment to what these services have been asking for. Worse still, Labor has quietly cut funding to volunteer emergency services in recent years, depriving funding from the very people who show up in times of crisis. The Coalition has committed to scrapping this unfair and unconscionable tax that hits those who protect us hardest. We've committed to returning to the original fire services levy and a reprioritisation within the Victorian budget that prioritises frontline workers over vanity projects and redundant bureaucratic roles. This fire tax not only threatens livelihoods, but it also erodes the trust between people and those elected to serve them. It's time to scrap the fire tax before it burns us all. About Nicole. Nicole Werner MP is the state representative for the seat of Warrandyte. She can be contacted at nicole.werner@parliament.vic.gov.au or 9841 5166.